Thanks for understanding. We need upstairs because the reason is today, I've got some information that I do have to ask either verbatim or near verbatim. So I'm going to make sure that I was in the atmosphere where I could do that. This will take me probably 10, maybe 15 minutes. And then we'll turn to what
IT.
Wonderful.
Anybody need a job at headquarters? There's some IT people who they just got fired.
Well, we just missed 5 minutes of it, so. They really get their act together, don't they?
Recording in progress.
to get ready for disaster season. And there is a tool for that. And as I just mentioned, it's called complex problem solving. Essentially what complex problem solving consists of is making sure that you understand the background of a problem that you really don't know what the problem is yet, so you have to understand the background of the issue. And this year it was hurricane season or disaster season 25. And then what you do is you identify whatever problem it is that you're trying to provide a course of action to solve. I'm going to get to both those in a second. So, I'm not going to go on the background. In the end, we begin to ask the question, what is our biggest challenge in the form of a question for getting ready for disaster season 25? And I stated the question, I think it was the first one, and I said essentially, we're not ready for disaster season 25, which we was not necessarily the deeper degree, to a great degree, ready for disaster season 25. In the end, after about 15 iterations of the problem statement, okay, we came to a final problem statement that sounded like this. FEMA and their partners do not understand the administration's intent for impending disaster operations to meet expectations while evolving towards the future of FEMA. And that is the problem that we had to solve. And that came down to a couple of courses of action, which were essentially we would define what the intent, the administration's intent for FEMA for this disaster season and the future were. And this intent worked out. Listen closely. The intent for disaster season 2025, safeguard the American people, return primacy to the states, strengthen their capability to respond and recover, coordinate federal assistance when deemed necessary while transforming to the future FEMA. So that's where we are right now. And this morning, we began for about 90 minutes, a section of the staff and I, to develop a plan to address disaster season 2025. And we've got quite a long way because we've already got a lot of information on that. We've done things in the past that lead right into what we're doing now, obviously. If we hadn't done things in the past that were relevant to the future to now, we'd be in great trouble, but we're not. And I would say we're about 80 or 85% there. And the next week, we will close that gap and get to probably 97, 98% of a plan. We'll never have 100% of a plan. Even if we did have 100% of a plan never survives first contact. However, we will do our best to make sure that the plan is all-encompassing. What does the plan include? It includes things like tabletop exercises at the cabinet, state, and then of course at the regional levels as well. It includes things like pre-position, information on that. It includes drills in what do I know, who needs to know it, and have I told them yet? So that is the plan, and that is how we will write it and play out. I intend to be done with the plan. Not in July, not in June, but very likely next Friday. I would like to lay the plan on the table in its glossiest form to Secretary Domes so she can take a good look at it. I will likely have already signed it. If there are sections of it she doesn't like, that's okay. But we are going to start passing information on how to implement the plan as early as next Monday or Tuesday. Guidance on pre-positioning, some guidance for regional ministers and administrators and that type of thing. So that's where we are on getting ready for disaster season. Now, that essentially addressed the initial determination of FY25 preparedness. I know that the staff still has information to pass to me. I think it's on May 15th and May 22nd, and that will be incoming. And that will help us inform the plan for disaster season 5. The other issue, the other memorandum, which was outlining FEMA's mission analysis for 2025, FY25. There will be an action plan associated with it, so we can address things in the mission analysis that we need to address. Now, real quickly, what mission analysis does is mission analysis identifies all of the laws that govern FEMA. Because within those laws are specified tasks. And I think there's probably 6 or 7 laws or acts that guide FEMA. Within those laws or acts, whatever they are, Stafford Act, the Homeland Security Act of 2002, and there's others, post-Katrina, I think it was a bill or an act, I can't remember, there are specified tasks. And I assume there's roughly somewhere between 150 and 175 specified tasks. And each one of those specified tasks can be binned into categories. So we'll make sure we capture all of the tasks, which I know that folks are doing that today, and then we will bin them. And by bin them, I mean some of those tasks will be kind of orange-like tasks. And by orange, I mean the fruit orange. But there might be tangerines, it might be blood oranges, it might be maybe a little bit grapefruit. All those we go in one day. Then you have all of the banana type things, whether they're plantains or they're big bananas or small bananas, they all go into another pile, okay? Until you get about 7 or 8 piles of similar but not the exact same things, and they will constitute our mission essential tasks. So we'll have our specified tasks, our mission essential tasks, and from those we will also make sure that we state our mission very, very clearly if it's not already. And then, instead of matching those to the current organization, we will make sure the current organization is matched to the mission essential tasks. And where the current organization doesn't fit with the mission essential task, that is where we will make changes. So I don't want to call it a surgical method because it doesn't really apply here, but there is a method to, and it's orderly, how we will make sure that our organization is matched to our mission essential tasks, which is matched to our mission. Here's the key thing about this whole exercise. In the end, we will know that the things we are doing are only things that we have to be doing, okay? We will not do anything that's not in statute. If we are doing things that are not in statute, we are wasting the American people's money, okay? Somebody else might be available to do it, but we are not going to do it. So we're only going to do those things that are in statute. And that is how FEMA 2 is going to operate. We will only do things that are in statute. FEMA 2 will also, as I call it FEMA 2, we will call it new version of FEMA. We will begin, in our plan, as alluded to, in the intent, we will return pharmacy to the states for emergency, or what I call crisis action, okay? Strengthen the capability to respond and recover and coordinate federal assistance when deemed necessary while transforming to the future of FEMA. So FEMA 2 will look different than FEMA 1. There'll be much more emphasis on the states to do response and recovery, and to some degree preparedness as well, of course. So that is what we have in mind. So now that I've said that, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think you'll have an opportunity to address what you missed.
Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. I've done this so many times, it's kind of getting to be old hat. Okay, so now the moment everybody's been waiting for, and we're not all crowded in the basement, it's not hot, and I've been able to actually read things clearly. We can go ahead and open the floor to questions. I know there's some prepared, if they're not prepared questions, because I have not seen the questions for the most part, I saw one of them. It was a particularly hard one to answer, but I had the answer immediately, so it really wasn't that bad. Let's go.
Sure. So, sir, people have been posting questions in the chat. I will read their questions verbatim from the chat, and as we said, you've not seen them before. So first, you've previously stated, I will achieve the president's intent. What is the president's intent for FEMA?
The president's intent for FEMA is to ensure that FEMA is only doing the things in law that it should be doing. That's number one. Okay, so that's what we're doing with the mission analysis. It's also for FEMA is to push a large part of response and recovery down to the state level. Okay, so that you can imagine that makes FEMA look very, very different. What it's going to look like in the end, we'll find out. Remember, the president's a bold man. President has a bold vision. He makes bold statements. And I will go back, or the secretary will go back with a vision or a version of FEMA that we feel that fits his vision. That's what I just said, okay? We will do only things that are in the statutes, and we'll put a large part of response and recovery down to the states. In fact, that's how we used to do emergency management. As I've been told in the last week, over the last 10 years in particular, we've taken on a lot of the burden of what used to be done at the state level. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does.
Okay.
The next question, can we please discuss downsizing? Are there plans for it? And if the president and the secretary feel the organization should be abolished?
So, look, FEMA has a statutory mission. So if we're going to completely abolish FEMA, okay, we will either have to find a different FEMA to do those missions, or we will have to change the law. Okay? And downsizing, look, I could say that there's not going to be any downsizing and things are going to be, look, just like they are 6 months from now. But think about it. If the president's vision is indeed to push elements of preparedness, response, and recovery down to the state level, there will very, very likely be reductions in force at FEMA because the states will take on those functions. Does that answer the question?
Next question, what role, if any, will you have in the activities of the FEMA Review Council?
Since I'm the, hold on. Looking for that title. Yeah, we'll start with the acting administrator, preparing to do, performing the duties of, or is formerly known as. I don't, very little, okay, I'll be aware of what they do. But remember, they're making decisions about FEMA, okay? They might approach me for information on FEMA, but since I'm in the chair now, I will very likely not be making the decisions. I will very likely be the executor of the decisions. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm the guy that's going to do the labor. I've been there before. Next.
Do the
All
what?
right, the next question, which is more important, the president's will or the interests of the American people?
To me, they're the same thing. Okay, what you're implying is there are two different things. I don't think there are. He's the president of the United States, and he has the best interest of the American people in mind. So I think those two things are essentially the same. I think President Trump supports, same two categories again?
The president's will and interests of the American people.
Yes. I think through his will, the president will maintain and ensure the best interest of the American people.
Okay. The next question. Some of us live more than 50 miles from our duty stations. Will we all be given the opportunity to transfer to a FEMA facility that is closer to our homes?
So, I don't know. And I know this topic in detail. And I know the detail because every time it comes up, a attorney normally has to sit me down and he'll say something like, these are the parameters. And this has changed here and there, okay? I do know that CWMD folks, when I was over there as the secretary, were given an opportunity to go to an alternate facility, right? That may or may not be the case, but it's something that we should put on the calendar that I need to take a look at on what that's coming, because we do owe an answer for folks. Yes, I don't know the exact answer, but we will find out because that changes a little bit as we move forward.
Stump the Chump.
With the upcoming hurricane season looming, will we have job security with the uncertainty of FEMA being dissolved? If not, will there be a heads up provided?
I'll give you the heads up as soon as I can. So we do need, many of us, I'm not going to say all, I'm not going to say the majority, but we will, I think, addressing this hurricane season, this disaster season, we're in a transition phase. It's not going to look entirely different of how we did in 2024, but it's not necessarily going to look like how we're going to do it in 2026. So there's a transition period. And normally in a transition period, there's going to be, we'll take some risk, but I don't want to take too much risk because, remember, the president's will and the American people's interests, I believe, are the same, and I'm here to make sure that is the case so that we can respond to the disaster season. Answer your question?
Yes. As we focus on our disaster efforts, when will we plan for non-disaster programs and actions?
That will have to be once we get our plan in place. We've got to get the 2025 disaster plan in place. That should be next week, and then we'll start passing information on it, affecting the plan, making sure it's rolling down the road, and then we'll start doing steady state operations. But I can give you a peek into something. We are going to write, and I don't know if we've ever done this before, we are going to write essentially a 2026 to 2030 strategy that covers that so that we can have some consistency across time. That in particular, I think, is what helps an organization if you can write a strategy for that far out. Of course, at CWMD, we're going to write one for 2040, but it's a little bit different because we have to develop capability and that type of thing. This is essentially how we would see the organization evolving and getting better over time. Have you done that before? Okay, so you've done that before. So there's already a template in place. Like most things, it's not a new idea. So we'll just keep moving that direction.
Okay. If states haven't budgeted, hired, or trained staff to handle the response and recovery, what timeline do you expect to make this a reality?
Well, that's a great question. So how are we going to essentially affect the transition? It's interesting because I just had a talk with someone today because there was a fire. I think it was in Minnesota,
Stump the
or
Chump
there's
again.
also one in New Mexico. And I asked the folks, I said, hey, you talk to the governor, give him a heads up, 50-50 might be coming. 75-25 right now, but 50-50 is coming. So part of it is letting people know as we transition, okay, that if it doesn't happen this year, it will very, very likely happen next year. We will transition this summer to something else. So I'm not sure if we can completely overcome the budget challenges, but we will at least be uncovering and discovering ways to do that. You know, some states are pretty good at this. The other day I was chatting with my girlfriend, she's from Texas, she's got like huge red hair like, and I said something, and she said, well, you know. Oh, I know what it was. I said, how come it takes so long to drive 10 hours from Galveston to Amarillo? She said, well, you know, Texas is bigger than Spain. I didn't know that until I looked at the map. Texas is huge. I mean, if you put it in the middle of Europe, it takes up most of Europe up. However, they do disaster recovery very, very well. And so does Florida, okay? So we should be able to take some lessons learned on how Florida and Texas do their disaster recovery, kind of spread that around and get other folks to do some way. And there should be some budgeting things that they have. I bet Governor Abbott has a rainy day fund for fires and tornadoes and disasters such as hurricanes. And he doesn't spend it on something else. What else?
Okay. So you've spoken about FEMA too. How does the administration plan to ensure continuity of FEMA's statutory National Training and Education NTED responsibilities, especially those outlined in 6 U.S. Code 748 and 313?
That's my job. That's why we're doing mission analysis, so I know exactly what's in statute and what's not in statute. If you ever take over an organization, I would advise everybody on this phone call to simply do a mission analysis, okay? What most people do, by criticizing them, because they just don't know, is they go to an organization, they look at it, they say, I'm gonna change this organization. So what they do is they stir the pot. They change the organization around, hoping for different outcomes. But that's like moving the furniture around in your living room and looking for a different seat to sit on. It's just not gonna work. Even though you move the furniture around, you might have a slightly different view, but it's the same furniture. You wanna get a decorator in there, which to get rid of and which to keep. That's what mission analysis does. What else?
What are your intentions for mitigation? You've only mentioned preparedness, response, and recovery.
Save that for the next time we talk, but I will, look, I think mitigation, I think mitigation, but I am gonna answer that. I think mitigation should be tied to, the grant processes. For example, we have I call it an inspections function. I think the polite word for it is audit. Yeah. I think mitigation should be tied to how well a state does when they're audited for how well they pay. Does that make sense?
No.
What role will DOJ have in approving your plans?
DOJ doesn't approve anything. In fact, I wrote a memo today to make sure that DOJ had, the freedom to ask any questions they needed. And I believe the second sentence in the second paragraph to DOJ, and you don't make any decisions. I'm the decider. Remember that whole thing I had? I alone speak for FEMA. I know not everybody liked it. That's part of the reason I said it, because DOJ doesn't speak for FEMA either. That's me. What else?
Is FEMA going to combine regional offices?
There's no plan for that. However, once we've done the mission analysis, if it drives that decision, then we could change it. But once again, that's why we're going to do the mission analysis. But I haven't run across any reason for that. But when you do mission analysis, a lot of times you discover things that you didn't know. You're essentially opening up all the closets and arranging them. Make sure you don't want to take any of your old shoes to the clothespin. Next.
Okay. What are your primary objectives over the next 3 months?
Well, number one is to make sure that we are prepared for disasters. Okay? And that means having the disaster plan written. Okay? I know how folks write plans. They usually take a long time to do it. We don't have a long time to get it done. I I like a lot of the plans that are already in place at FEMA, but we need one specific to this disaster season. We will do the mission analysis, okay? And we will also begin looking at what FEMA 2 is going to look like. And the FEMA 2 is going to look radically different from FEMA 1. We will start figuring out how we are going to make those changes, okay? Because at some time in the next 6 or 7 months, we have to know what it looks like. But the number one priority is to make sure that the American people are well served in this disaster season. I will be traveling some because I need to get eyes on target, figure out what's going on downrange. I need to get with the regional administrators. I want to go to the state level. I particularly want to see how Texas and Florida have their disaster plans and their disaster preparedness set up. But I also want to go to other states to find out how they don't have it set up. But I'm not going to name those states. But yes, I'll be doing some traveling as well. I also have a team, 2 teams that are going to travel around to see how well we are prepared for disaster season. Once again, my initial look is we're pretty well prepared. This was the big thing, to make sure that we understood what the intent was. I got a phone call the other day, I think it was from, I'm not sure who said his name, on accident, not on accident, but I kind of absentmindedly hit the green button on my phone. This guy from some cable news station. He was starting to ask me about complex problem solving. And at first I was kind of confused. I had no idea what it was. But he told me, like, you've got a leaker out there and I can get anything I want from the leaker. I said, that's fine with me. None of it's classified and all of it I can support. But he said, I don't really want to talk about the leaker and I don't really want to talk about the details of your complex problem solving, because I don't really care about the floods and the hurricanes and all that other kind of stuff. I got a problem here at this news station I need you to help me with. Our ratings are falling and I hope you can apply your complex problem solving to it. But I told him I was busy. I said, because my number one priority right now is planning for hurricane season. I'm not even gonna use the complex problem solving methodology to root out who's the leaker. So be it. What else?
I think this is the last question we have time for. What if the states don't have the capacity or ability to absorb those tasks that you think should be pushed to the states?
Back to the intent. We did a pretty good job on this, by the way. I'm able to answer a bunch of questions from the intent. And coordinate federal assistance when deemed necessary, okay? So if they need it, we're gonna help them out. But we're gonna try to hold them to 75-25, okay? But where they need it, obviously, we're gonna have to deem it necessary to help out. I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
How many is that, by the way?
I've asked about 15 of the 18 questions that we've had here.
Oh, let's just go to the end, come on.
Okay. What programs are you targeting for reduction?
Where's my mission? I've got to do the mission analysis first, okay? And that's going to tell me what's inside the statutory and outside the statutory. If you're outside the statutory, you will become a target. Period. I don't know that yet.
Okay. When is the reduction in force supposed to start?
I don't know. I need to ask that question. I don't even know. That's going back and forth from it's happening, it's not happening, it's happening, it's not happening. I have an attorney that's going to give me some advice on that. The answer is I don't know. And you say, well, you should know that. I said, well, I knew it a month ago, but I don't think it's the same now as it was a month ago. Okay. I've heard there's actually not going to be a RIF, but I don't want to state that officially because somebody will repeat it. But I'll find out.
Last question. Administrator Richardson, what is your personal stance on FEMA?
My personal stance on FEMA, listen very, very closely, is that I will make sure that the president's intent is done for FEMA. So that's it. My personal feeling or opinion,
Stance was the question.
stance, is I support President's stance. Is that 18?
That was 18?
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Wait a minute, one more.
We'll see you probably 2 weeks. Once we get the plan done, we will publish the plan so that everybody can see it, even those that want to share it with cable news or newspapers, who else. Look, I gotta keep folks informed. I'm always scared, a word I don't normally use. I'm always nervous that something was gonna get leaked. We would come to a full stop. I don't stop. I think I said that before. So we'll drive on and just let folks know which direction we're going. I'll be able to support the direction, make a decision, and be able to justify that decision. That's all I need to be able to do. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. You're clear to drop.